Hi, everyone. I want to welcome Malissa Pistillo to the podcast tonight. For those of you who are not familiar with her work, Malissa is a resilient, determined advocate for the truth surrounding psychiatric medication. As with many of our stories, hers has a before and after. This is a podcast of hope, and while what you may hear and see tonight may be heartbreaking, you'll also witness a person with unequivocal hope, determination, and optimism for the future. Malissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Henry. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you for that. And it's nice to see you again. I know we've had a few encounters, so it's nice to be with you again.
Why don't you start and introduce yourself to the audience, what you are doing right now and why you are doing it?
Yeah, definitely. So as you mentioned, so I'm Malissa Pistillo. I am currently a benzo and psych drug awareness advocate in this space. And what led me there to that journey was back in 2018, I suffered a traumatic brain injury. And unfortunately, that pushed me through the medical system, which I was not familiar with by any imagination. And in that process, I trusted the doctors. I handed reverence to them, and I followed their guidance, and unfortunately went down the route of psychiatric drugs. And through that journey, I was left injured after injured after injured. And the last place I ended up was on benzodiazepines, which ultimately left me 98% disabled. I wasn't able to feed myself. I wasn't able to clean myself. I experienced over 200 symptoms simultaneously, and I fought for my life from bed for a very long time, and I'm still fighting. I fight every day. I fight every day to show up. And so show up is not show up to do something outside of me. It's to show up by staying alive and keeping a pulse. And so that brings me to my advocacy work. I also do a podcast, and I have my social media presence to help build awareness. It's like more than just it's awareness for those that may walk this path. And it's also for those that have been harmed to feel relatable. I show a lot of difficult content online. I think that it is very vulnerable content that I share. And the goal is for those that have been harmed to feel like they have a safe place to go and know that they're not the only one suffering, because it is such an inhumane journey that we go through. And I wish I had that through my journey. And so I hope to provide that to them and educate. I am here to educate. That is my purpose in life. Definitely, I would say A-type, have always been successful at work. And leading up to that moment in time, I had just gotten married. I was an amateur Muay Thai boxer. So I was boxing like 6 days of the week. So I was training. I was doing all the training that would lead someone to get into the ring. I was not going into the ring. I was a Barbie doll. I mean, I in my gloves, in my gloves, I had I had long nails on it. I would break my nails when I would be boxing, but I was a Barbie doll. I was certainly, so I didn't want to get punched in the face. So let's say that. So, but I wanted to train as if I was going into the ring, and that's what I was doing. And so, the day of the incident, I was training with my best mate, and we were doing elbows. We were like shadowing each other and doing elbows. And the trainer, which actually was at my wedding 3 months before that, I think that he kind of got the best of him. Sometimes his ego got in the way, and he was like, "Oh, you're doing it wrong." Not to me, but to my partner, and I was holding the mitts. And he was like, "Oh, you're doing it wrong with the elbow." And this guy is like 6 foot, this guy's above 6 feet, like easily over 240, 260, 260 pounds, like wet. Like this guy was a boxer. He hard guy. Okay. And as he gets into position, I could just tell in his face, I'm like, "Yo, this is a demonstration. Be careful. Yo, be careful." I could just tell. And he went full force. He went full force with an elbow, and I couldn't. I'm 5'2". I was 110 pounds wet, with muscle. That's with muscle. He could have blown in my direction. I would have flown, right? And I was a very strong at that time. So that says a lot. But just as a woman, I can't. I am a woman. No matter how hard I train, I am a woman. And so when you have this grown ass man that is a boxer coming full force with an elbow, unfortunately, I was not able to restrain the weight, and I sustained a pretty severe concussion.
What was then referred to or perceived to be a concussion turned out to be something more traumatic. But I think I heard you say somewhere else that there were recurring things that were happening after the injury, which led you obviously to then seek medical intervention.
Okay, yeah. So a concussion is a traumatic brain injury. Those terms are kind of intertwined. For me, I would definitely, I mean, it was definitely on the severe side, but they could have absolutely been worse. However, what led me, I was healing. I actually showed a lot of healing in just a few months. And unfortunately, I had decided to start a new job. And I actually applied for that job before the concussion. So talk about timing, and more like destiny, I guess. But I actually did that interview process like from home while I was going through the brain injury, which was at that time was like the worst thing that I had ever experienced. It was horrific, nowhere compared to what I was about to endure moving forward. But after 4 months, I was doing a lot better, and I was working this new job, and I think it also, starting the new job, there was just so much pressure. It was a new industry for me, super technical. It was like drinking at like out of a fire hose. And so that also exposed that I wasn't my ability to absorb information wasn't fully there. And that continued putting pressure on me. And that ultimately led me to a vestibular relapse. And that vestibular relapse kind of put me into this fight or flight mode. Like, I was so scared. I had no idea what was happening to me. The doctors were not educating me about anything in relation to the TBI. And I wasn't doing research out of my own fear. And so ultimately, I went into this fight or flight mode, which put my nervous system into a sympathetic nervous system response, and I stopped sleeping. I didn't know this at the time, what was happening. And the next day, I went to the doctor, and the next day they gave me prescriptions.
What did they give you?
They gave me. First off, she didn't like it. The conversation was mind blowing. Of like,
let's start with the consultation.
Well,
that's usually interesting in its own.
I wouldn't like it. I sat in that room crying because I didn't sleep that was the first night I have never slept in my life. I just relapsed. I have all these symptoms. I don't understand what's happening. So I'm sitting in her room crying. And I think she didn't know what to do with a patient that was crying. And so her natural response was, let me drug you. And so, I mean, I've never suffered from depression. I've never had anxiety. I mean, I was a Muay Thai boxer. I'm someone that skydive, bungee jump, flip quads. Anxiety was not exactly in my vocabulary. Okay. Which again, that is also a byproduct of something, which I think is another interesting conversation. But regardless, I never had any of these, I guess, symptoms that these doctors would prescribe these for. And she still prescribed them, and I accepted them. And so I was ultimately prescribed an SSRI, Lexapro, and an SNRI, Trazodone. And so I don't know why I was prescribed 2 drugs. Go ahead.
No. So essentially, what I'm hearing is that you were prescribed antidepressants for a concussion or traumatic brain injury because you were crying.
That's right.
So the doctor, I assume this was an MD.
That's right.
It seems as if the doctor was either confused or overwhelmed by the fact that you were crying and made the leap to depression and anxiety, and then prescribed you with what is arguably one too many. But okay, so you were then on an SSRI and an SNRI. How long did that last?
Yeah, and what I want to add is that she didn't prescribe it for depression. She prescribed them for insomnia. And what I suspect, to your point, was anxiety. It was like because I was crying, she associated that to anxiety. And there is a fundamental difference between fear and anxiety, which our system doesn't understand fundamentally the difference. But okay. Ultimately, I was on those two drugs for 8 months. I have previously said in like other interviews it was 6 months. It was actually 8 months. Um, and from the beginning, within just like 2 weeks, I started experiencing major symptoms, which essentially was serotonin syndrome.
Okay. And then what did you do then? Did you go off the medication?
So I didn't go. So I was having these symptoms, going to doctors, hospitals. They all denied it. They all said these drugs don't cause these symptoms, despite it actually being listed on the drug insert, which makes things so much worse. But they all denied it. And so I would like these drugs alter your consciousness. They spellbind you. And so you start to get convinced of like, is it the drugs or is it helping me? And this is me. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe this is the brain injury. I mean, this is what my doctor was telling me. So like most of these symptoms I never had, like not even after the brain injury. And so I was being convinced that these were the TBI symptoms. And so that was a big part of why I didn't come off originally. Also, I had the intent of getting off of these drugs and I started doing cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. And that doctor suggested do not come off of these drugs while we're doing the protocol. You could come off after. And so that kind of forced me to stay on so I could get that protocol under my belt before trying to come off because I went on them for insomnia. So I needed to ensure that I was able to sleep somehow.
That sounds like a reasonable take is to let's work with the CBT whilst on the medication, and then as the CBT starts taking effect, we can then start tapering off the medication. That's always something that I understood as a good practice. I mean, not after being on it for a year or 8 months, but before you just summarily stop the medication and you are going to embark on a treatment, do them simultaneously, and as the treatment starts taking, then taper off your medication. Is that a fair assumption?
So I totally agree. I think that the issue for me was that I was having severe symptoms to those drugs, and those drugs were causing insomnia. And the doctors and the therapists that run cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia or any type of CBT, they're not educated on psych drug harm or how to deal with insomnia in relation to psych drug harm. So for me, it was like defying gravity. Like I was hallucinating in my apartment doing this protocol, staying up to 2 a.m. in the morning. And like it was, but I would agree with you that that should be the standard protocol, that generally if someone is on these drugs, that they would do that type of protocol. It's just the second, now once someone comes off the drugs, those therapists are not equipped and they're not educated or qualified to manage someone going off those psych drugs. And what often happens is they'll have all these symptoms and those exact therapists will be the ones to say you should go back onto the drugs because of the exact effects coming off of them. And so that's the only thing I want to mention. But yes, I second what you said completely.
So I was going at, okay, you had a medical professional prescribing you these drugs, and then you had another therapist who was doing the CBT with you, and those two probably didn't communicate correctly, or they might have, but decided, well, let her just continue on that path. But if it was the same doctor or what I would deem standard, regular, ethical practice, having two doctors or medical professionals communicate so that the stories overlap with one patient, that sort of thing won't happen. If the first doctor identified that you were responding badly to the serotonin, then obviously it makes sense to not continue with the medication. But with the CBT, obviously with the CBT, but not with the medication because of the adverse effect that you had to the serotonin.
So to your point, like if someone's experiencing serotonin syndrome, they need to immediately adjust the drugs. Like that's like they need their help to work with the doctor to like the whole for that syndrome to start going away, you have to lower the drug, right? So that's ultimately the solution to serotonin syndrome. My issue with the doctors were that none of them were educated in psych drug harm and knew what was happening. Like, and so even if they were communicating, which I don't recall if they communicated to the CBT and my doctor, it didn't matter because neither of them were educated on psych drug harm. They weren't concluding my symptoms to the drugs. I was being told it was me.
These doctors were all medical practitioners, MDs, though, not psychiatrists, correct?
Correct. They were all MDs. Well, so the CBT therapist, she wasn't an MD. She was a doctor. She
Yes,
wasn't
a psychologist. I would imagine.
correct. And the two institutions that I'm going to are the best in New York. Like these are the best of the best. Like I wasn't messing around. Like I'm glad to throw money at anything at that point. And so I am seeing what I believed to be and what I'm still told is the best of the best in New York City. So I don't know where else to go from there, you know?
Okay, well, things are going to get darker pretty soon. But before we get there, I'm of the opinion, and I run I guess a sort of similar or parallel type of channel to you in terms of what I'm trying to portray to the public. And I'm of the opinion that an MD, or as we call him here, a general practitioner, GP, should not be in a position to prescribe psychiatric drugs. What is your take on that?
Oh, no, well, I completely agree with you because they're taking one pharmacological class. They're taking one class to understand prescription drugs. And so, how is it that we're allowing them to, like, a patient walks in, you're getting a drug within 10 minutes. These doctors are not qualified by a long shot. But I also need to mention psychiatrists that take many of these classes are also not educated. And again, their textbooks are infiltrated by big pharma. They are trained to prescribe. They are not trained to deprescribe or diagnose psych drug harm. So yes, but I agree 100% with you.
But we still I still see a lot of the same things happening here. The majority of people, the majority of my community are people who have been on psychiatric drugs for more than 5 years. Most of them prescribed by an MD or a GP, as it's called here, and all of them, almost all of them, say that the consultation was not up to their standard, and if it had been, they probably wouldn't have taken the drug. But I've never, and I've been on, I can't remember, but I've been probably on 6, 7, maybe 8 different types of antidepressants over my time. I've never been informed about potential withdrawals, what could happen when your body creates tolerance over time. We might have to introduce a new drug or whatever, and so forth. So I told the person, look, I'd rather do the research myself and find these, what I would call ethical psychiatrists and doctors, and rather go down that rabbit hole and try and figure out what is true and what is not. Before we get into your main brain injury, because the concussion or the traumatic brain injury was just the icing on the cake. Before we get there, I sent you two pictures, and I was hoping you'd allow me to put them on the screen for the people to see. In the first picture, it's a picture of you in your wedding dress. What is going through that young lady's mind?
So at my wedding. So my wedding is an interesting.
Not particularly at your wedding, but around that time. Looking at the future, looking at what's about to happen, looking at family, looking at partner. What's going through that woman's mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the outside, I had a lot going for myself. Again, I was someone that was putting a lot of effort into my physical looks. I was someone that was putting a lot of effort at work and being successful there. But there is also a truth that I was struggling in my relationship with my husband, including that time. And so that was a difficult time, even though it's not portrayed in those wedding photos. I was struggling internally with my battle with my relationship and staying in that relationship despite going down the aisle. And so I think this is an important question because I think I certainly looked like I had everything going for me. Me and my husband owned our apartment. We had a beautiful car. We had, this wedding. You can't imagine the cost of that wedding. Like all of these things from the outside looked great. But deep down, I was struggling in that relationship. And I think that is a big part of energetically attracting what is about to occur in my life. Like, I know, obviously, I am not I know can easily be considered a victim of what this man has done, demonstrating a technique and knocking me out, like is what happened, right? On paper, I'm obviously a victim of what had happened. But I also think there is a higher perspective to all of this. And I think energetically, I was calling that to me because I was struggling in a relationship and struggling with other things that I was not aware of at that time. And so I think, ironically, the fact that had happened right after my wedding, I think was major symbolism, and it was destined. So I know that this is a bit of a different perspective, maybe that you expected, but that is my truth.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 28.
28. Okay. And when did you contract bind?
Bind, I would say when I was it 30, 31 years old? So now I'm 34. And I'm 42. I'm in my 42 month now of bind.
Okay. So you did get married to the man that is now still your husband.
Correct.
And you contract benzodiazepine induced
neurological dysfunction.
Neurological disorder?
Dysfunction.
Dysfunction. What exactly is that? And why does it sound... Well, let me take you back. Let me take you one step back. I sent you another picture, which, if you don't mind, I'd like to put on the screen as well. When was that picture taken, and how do you feel when you look at the picture of you in your wedding dress, and perhaps not as happy as you thought you may be, but very healthy, very determined, very progressive, and very goal-oriented, to the other picture where it's physically almost impossible for you to get out of bed and stand on your own. You've also gained quite a lot of weight, which and obviously lost a massive amount of strength. And with that, what I know, also an immense amount of physical pain, and what I would imagine is extreme emotional trauma. So if you put those pictures together, is there any emotion of resentment?
So it's been a long journey, right? And so for a long time, I could not even look at those pictures. I couldn't think about them. And these photos my wedding photos were published by these big glamour magazines, so it's all over the internet. I was published by the wedding designer and all of this. And so it's like all over the internet, and that did not make things easier for me. And it was very difficult. And I didn't look at them until maybe like probably around closer to the second year mark into bind. So that, again, that is like, I'm all in with the brain injury, what happened with the SSRIs, SNRIs, and benzos. I'm like 6.5 years, I think. It was 2018. This all went down. But so this has been quite a long journey, but I struggled with looking at those photos. And so there was a time I had to start to face them and complete my grieving process. That person that you see in those photos is not here today. Like, even in this vessel today. Like, I even remember the moment when my soul actually left my body and I was left with a fragment of something that was going to go on and carry me somehow through this journey. It didn't matter. And this is why I bring up the hardworking, dedicated, and this warrior character. It didn't matter that I was any of that. You lose your mind, body, and spirit through bind and any psych drug journey. There is a spectrum. So I think there is definitely a spectrum of injury. I was unfortunately on the furthest side of that spectrum. And you lose everything. It did not matter how much of an A-type hard worker I was. I just knew I needed to stay alive somehow. And I questioned many times how I am still here today, how I've made it to this point. But I had to grieve that Malissa that you see in those photos. I am not her anymore. And I've grieved her. I've accepted it. And I no longer hold resentment. That part of me is healed now. Maybe my vessel is not healed, but inside of me, in my heart, I have said goodbye to her, for sure.
Okay. So let's get right into bind, because even science, even medical literature is still sort of on the fence about this. So let's just ignore them. I've done a bit of research. I've also seen a video of you where you listed a bunch of symptoms. And I did a search about symptoms for bind, and it listed that it can go from 50 plus to 100 plus symptoms. And I remember you saying, I think at one point you had about 200. What makes, it's easy to hear that and feel like, okay, that's a sensationalized answer. What are some of the most debilitating effects of being in that condition? And I've seen your video, so I know some of it. But for the new audience member, or for the audience members meeting you for the first time tonight, and looking at you, significantly different than from the first picture, but also very much significantly different from the second picture. It's amazing how far you've come with your body and your health. What is it that makes this so horrific? And obviously the people will see the difference. And but what are the feelings? What is it that really gets you down, and what makes you struggle to get up not struggle to make you get up in the morning, but struggle to even want to get up in the morning?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And it's hard to imagine that there is an illness that can cause 200 symptoms simultaneously. Let me tell you, I would have never believed this was humanly possible. But we have to remember, it's not humanly possible because it is not human or organic. It is synthetically, chemically induced. These drugs often damage a lot of, and it's I don't know, I guess, let's say 1 in 6 people for benzodiazepines, or example of antidepressants, it's 1 in 10 people that are left with protracted withdrawal syndrome. In my case, bind is the same version of that. But 200 symptoms sounds crazy. That is
Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead. 1 in 6 people that are on benzodiazepines that try to come off will be left with bind, will be left protracted withdrawal syndrome. It's not a small percent. This is a very, that's not a side effect. That is an effect of the drug. 1 in 6 people, and then on antidepressants, it's 1 in 10. It is not a small amount, unfortunately. And most people are misdiagnosed, or they're told to go back on the drug because they're convinced it's a pre-existing condition resurfacing. And I can almost assure you 99% of the time it is not. And so it's devastating, and it's because our system lacks so much education in this. It is listed on the drug insert, so there is no question. The FDA and Big Pharma have been forced to add it to the drug insert under protracted withdrawal syndrome. There's no question. There's no debate any doctor can have with us. It's right there in the literature, and there's plenty of existing literature done by Harvard, all these institutions that speak about psych drug harm. And so it's out there. But back to your point of your question around what were my worst symptoms. it's like hard to pick. There's no particular, like, it's all of these symptoms that I document. I'm going to post tonight another video showing those 200 symptoms again. So it's funny you're bringing that up. But it is why we experience all of these symptoms, and I'll get into the names of this, is when these drugs are damaging, down-regulating our neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters exist in every part of the brain, body, nervous system, gut. And those parts of the brain and body are responsible for how we function. So when you damage the way it's supposed to function, everything is going to stop functioning. And that is why we experience all of these insane symptoms. And so for me, my worst symptoms, I would say, the spinal cord injury, like this, I could no longer walk. I could no longer, like, sitting up. Even now, I cannot tell you the pain it is sitting up in this position. And I have ice packs and pillows behind me to help me do this. But the pain, imagine it feels like a cement truck dumping cement that's infiltrated by poison down your spine. And it feels like when you sit up, it feels like if someone put a Jenga together and was going to take out the last piece, that it's about to collapse. That's what it feels like. And some people have broken their spine by tempting, unfortunately. And so in my case, I just, like, for a long time, I did not walk. My husband had to transport me using a dolly. He would put me on a dolly and help transport me. So that was one of the things. The other things is it felt like I was on a permanent acid trip. Like, imagine taking acid or LSD or any hallucinogenic drug and it being the worst thing you could imagine. Like, you're being murdered from the inside out. You're completely in panic, psychosis. The room is spinning. So you have like vertigo 24/7. I'm sitting here and the room is still gyrating. I am 42 months into bind and this room is still gyrating. I've just learned how to dissociate from my vessel so well at this point. But you feel like you're on an acid trip being dragged by a car, and our perception, our consciousness is so altered that we only see the perception of death. We're not able to feel positive emotion. We're only able to feel negative emotion. Some people have anhedonia. Anhedonia, right? Anhedonia is like you're not able to feel positive emotion, but you're able to feel anger. There's also emotional anesthesia where you don't feel either. You don't feel positive or negative. In my case, rage. I was able to kill. I had the capability to kill another person. That is how much these drugs altered my being. Like, I had full capability to do that, but I was disabled. So I wasn't going to go far, right? Unfortunately. Well, fortunately and unfortunately, I was disabled. So, so it's like, imagine being on this trip that does not end it's 24/7. For me, I was not someone that had windows. So there's something called windows and waves. Some people go in and out of their symptoms. That was not my case. I was far on the spectrum. It was 24/7 for me. But while this is happening, imagine that all of the nerves in your head and your nervous system it felt like bricks were being literally like thrown across the room into my head. And I'm being thrown across the room, but I'm not moving. I'm laying in bed, not able to move because of the severe electrocutions, which would be the next symptom I would mention is the electrocutions. I couldn't even open my mouth, but we'll get into that in a second. Imagine sitting in bed, you're not moving, but it feels like you're being thrown across the room in every direction possible. And the nerve, it felt like someone was smashing my head with a brick 24/7, every part of my head. And you feel like you're also on a speedboat. It's called Mel-Debartment syndrome. It's a symptom. We call it the boaty feeling because you feel like you're on a speedboat. It's horrific. It's horrific. I still have it. By no means to the imagination I was 42 months ago. It took me a really long, I would say the first 2 to 3 years, just, it's unfathomable. But so imagine now you're experiencing all of this. And then, like I said, the electrocution. So I unfortunately I still cannot lay on my back. I could not turn to my left in the bed for the first 2.5, 3 years. I now can, but it's not 100%. I still could get electrocuted. But I was not capable of moving at all. I could only move my hands and my forearms. I still had muscle atrophy everywhere, which will be my next symptom that I mentioned. But anything I couldn't move my head even an inch. If I couldn't open my mouth an inch. I couldn't turn my head an inch. And if I did, I would be electrocuted. And the electrocution is like, imagine someone putting a taser to your nervous system and also vertigo. So it expedited the vertigo and you're being electrocuted until somehow you can get out of it. And so that was happening. And then there was another symptom that I had just mentioned that I wanted to talk about, the atrophy. So because of the drugs, I had complete muscle atrophy through my entire body. Obviously I still have atrophy and it's very difficult for me to hold myself up. But I wasn't able to pick up my upper arm. I wasn't able to pick up my limbs, my body anymore. I was stuck in bed, just laying there. And at this time, I was actually in this room, funny enough. I was just stuck here, laying, facing this direction, and wishing I was dead. Wishing every second of the day that someone could put a 9mm into my mouth and make it over. Because now I couldn't even cock a gun if I wanted to, because I had lost all muscle. And the only thing I had access to in my body was my fingers and my forearms. Some people have severe neuropathy and sensations in their fingers. That I had neuropathy there too, but nowhere near the rest of my body. And the muscle atrophy was at its severest from my elbow up and through the rest of the body. I couldn't even hold my neck up. I was wearing neck braces. If I had to sit up for a couple minutes or whatever it is, I had to wear a neck brace to hold my neck up. And so this is just, there are hundreds, I've documented over 200 symptoms, which is known in this community. This is well documented. There's lists online. You could find all these symptoms. And what we have to understand is even just dizziness. It's not just dizziness. It's not just vertigo. There are so many different parts of the brain and body that causes dizziness. There's the vertigo, there's the Mel-Debartment, there was 5 different types of dizziness that I was experiencing all at the same time. And so you're not human. Again, everything that makes us human is stripped from us going through this journey. And I say us because when I speak, I don't only speak for myself, I speak for our community, because so many people have walked the same path I have walked, right?
So I think a deep and disturbing question might be if you had the ability before making some strides towards betterment. Do you think you would have considered ending it?
Well, I think it's suicidal ideation is a symptom, and when you're under that severe pain, it's almost impossible. It's impossible to think you're not considering it. I think at that time, my husband, and I would not be here today without my husband. I want to make that very clear. And so he was the one feeding me information. And so I wasn't like, he was actively on benzo buddies getting information. I was not. I was so gone. I could not read information. I could not be triggered by like other. I would read anything and I would just be so severely triggered that could have led me to my death. And so the best thing was for him to provide me in that information. And he just always gave me hope. He's like, you're going to get through this. You're going to heal. This is not you. Like, he said that to me. He quit his job. He became my full-time caretaker. And that is what he did. That was his role 24/7. He slept on the floor. He slept on this floor right here. I mean, he slept on the floor in total, probably 3 years in total, maybe 2.5 between tapering and bind. I have to look at the dates, but over 2 years, he slept on tiles. He slept on the wood floor. He sometimes had a blanket, and it was to prevent me from taking my life. I was not capable of being alone. I was severely protracted and injured. And I think because he kept feeding me the hope that I was going to get better. And when I ended into bind, I had no idea that this could last. I had no idea that this could last years. And that ignorance probably helped me. I just thought that I was going to get a miracle. So you may be dying and fighting for your life, but you also cannot believe that a drug that the doctor gave you is doing this to you. And then when it does happen, you're like, well, there's no way a human could live like this. There's no way this could be that long. And so I would make it to the first month, the second month, the third month. Like, okay, I'm definitely going to heal by the 6th month. It's impossible. Then it would be the 8th month. 10th, 14th month, 24 month, 36 months. And I'm now 42 months and I am 42. And so I think the ignorance kind of helped me there, that kept me going. I also worked with a lot of shamans and intuitives. Like, I did so much of the inner work and I worked with so many people that they gave me hope. They told me I was going to heal. They were like, you're going to heal. You just need to keep going. And it wasn't one person. It was many different shamans, many different intuitives that I worked with. And not even knowing me, they all shared the same thing. That is what kept me going. And that's the message I shared to others. Is like, you will heal. You just need to keep going, you know?
Yeah. So from the second picture to what I'm seeing in front of me now, it's quite obvious that you are going to heal, and it might take a bit of time still. But I mean, the difference between the two is absolutely remarkable. I went through your TikTok earlier today just to get a few and get sort of a few points of references, and I was struck by how much your body and your face has changed from that second picture to where you are moving back to almost picture number one. And it seems like, and it seems like over time it might be very well possible. But I want to speak about your husband, because you mentioned that before you got married, there were some problems, and the relationship may not have been as healthy at the time as it should have been. In hindsight, it does seem to me now that you've married an absolute incredible man who stuck by your side and is sticking by your side. I saw him just before the video started. He's quit his job, like you mentioned, and he's in full-time employ of you now. Has has the problems that you faced before getting married subsided to a point where you can now see the real value?
Yeah, and I love this question, and it's interesting that you're bringing this up. So, um, me and my husband struggled from day one when we got together, and there was a lot of reasons that I now understand why I stayed. Um, this was a relationship that I should have walked away from. I'll be honest, but I didn't. And coming into going through psych drug harm, and once I went into tapering, which I was already injured at the time, because I was forced to jump off 50%, I was already injured from the drug. So through my tapering, which lasted 7 months, there was a point. um, we were working with a shaman, and that shaman exposed a lot that was happening in our relationship. And it exposed a lot of the harm he was doing to me. And so he is absolutely, and I will stand by this, one of the most amazing people I've ever met. And I am forever grateful for everything he has done for me. But I think something that's not shown on my videos is where we were struggling. And we struggle. There was a disconnect with the emotional connect in our relationship with him. And so it's something we have worked many times to save this marriage through this journey. And I think that only happened because it was like a gun to the head moment, that it was like, if we're gonna make this, we need to do this. Like, if either of us are gonna walk out of this alive somehow, we need to do this. And so that was very much the moments we had. And it's true that we are still struggling there. That emotional connect, that I think as a woman, we all need this emotional connect to our partner. And when that lacks, a part of us is dimmed. And that has been my experience. It's like, he is the best caretaker in under the sun. Like, 5-star, if Michelin star restaurants had a Michelin star for caretakers, he would get that, right? But I also think that's a part why I'm still sick. I'll be honest. And I know that may not make a lot of sense, but I think it's safer from a higher perspective, not Melissa, my mind, but from a higher perspective. I think it's safer for my body to stay sick because he treats me better when I'm sick. And so it's a very difficult concept for people to understand. This is what my book is about. My book will show all of the sides of this relationship. But I believe that my body, it's almost safer for me to keep myself sick because there's that physical and emotional connection in the illness, not in our relationship. And again, I know that may be very difficult for people to understand, but there is a higher perspective to everything. And so it's just interesting that you're bringing that up.
It does make sense to me in the sense that the emotional availability in terms of a loving and affectionate relationship might not be there, but in terms of being the perfect caretaker or the perfect person in order to turn to for advice or for guidance, those can be played by one person, and but also potentially two. But like you said, you did go through with the marriage, and you fought hard to come to a place where it now seems to work as long as you are sick. But in terms of, and correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of emotional and physical romance, in terms of that relationship, that might be lacking, and potentially for the better.
So I think me and him will have to make decisions in what we do. And I don't know what that's exactly going to look like right now. Everything I'm sharing with you, he's fully aware of. And I also think in my own way, because of who I am, this perfectionist, someone that's super controlling. And from a higher perspective, there's reasons why he attracted to a partner like that as well, which we also know. Like, we have the blueprint of how we ended up to this moment in time, and I feel blessed but I also did the work to get to this point. But I don't know what's planned for us. We may be together, we may not be together. And I think regardless if we stay together, I don't consider this failure, a separation. I don't consider the amount of work that we put into this and the love, that would be the one thing. Like, we are so madly in love with each other. There's so much love in our relationship, but I've also realized that love is not enough in a relationship. And so I don't know what the future holds. We may stay together, we may not, but if we don't, it is not a failure, it's a graduation. And so it's complicated because I'm sick and I need a caretaker and I'm injured and I can only walk still 20 minutes a day with support and I can't shower on my own and I can't, so it's very complex. But I guess that's all I could say on our relationship for now.
Okay. I wrote the question down here. How and when do you think doctors / psychiatrists will take before acknowledging the existence of these conditions? Or have they? And are they just ignoring it?
They are absolutely not acknowledging it, despite it being listed on the drug insert. My doctor still today has never used the word protracted withdrawal syndrome, benzo withdrawal, bind, no, has yet to say this word in an appointment with me, which is virtual at this point, obviously, because I can't see her in person. But I think that it needs to, I think the more we get media coverage, the more it's in the news, more on more in TV. I think they're going to be forced into the corner, because now you have patients walking to the room and being like, F you, I now have protracted withdrawal syndrome. It's right here on the drug insert. And so we're cornering the doctors. We're cornering them. And so do I think things are going to change in my lifetime? 100%. I think things 100%. Look at PSSD. PSSD, it's not even PSSD is post-SSRI sexual dysfunction that comes with antidepressants, SSRI, SNRI, happens to 1 in 216 people. That is not even listed on the drug insert in America. Okay, that is not listed in Europe and I believe Canada. It is, and so, but it is hitting the media hard. So many people on social media, especially on Twitter, are talking about having PSSD. And so it is now gaining a lot of momentum. And there are doctors that are starting to acknowledge it because they see it on the media. They see that this news is breaking out. And so that's already happening with PSSD. It's a matter of time with someone with, protracted withdrawal syndrome. And so, I definitely think, and I think it's people like us that talk about it. And you were posting this interview, like someone's going to see it and be like, shit, is that like, maybe I wasn't as bad at her, or maybe I was, or maybe I had these symptoms. Was it the drugs? Because the doctors do man, what a talent they have to convince someone it's them. It is a gift, a talent that they have. That's for sure.
I see, and it's not a joke, thousands of people online explaining these symptoms, but not knowing the acronym.
Right.
Let me call it that. Let me keep it simple. And by educating them, and that's why I continually ask you, when you use an acronym, explain it. What does it mean? But I see them, and I see them on your channel. I see them on mine. My channel is small. Your channel is substantially bigger, but I see it on huge channels as well. And I've now started to see it transcend into podcasting as well. There is this one man, I forget his name. He lives in Canada, and he was prescribed Cymbalta by his psychiatrist. He took his first dose of Cymbalta, and 40 minutes later, he noticed something was wrong. and that something was post-SSRI sexual dysfunction after one pill. And it cost him his first marriage. His second marriage seemed to be going strong, but 14 years down the line, it's still an issue. It's still the inability for him to experience what would be an orgasm. All the parts are functioning perfectly well, but there's no feeling or sensation that goes along with it, which, I mean, it would drive me insane. But those stories coming forward, and by the thousands, and I'd like to sort of juxtapose it with politics as well, is that it's not going to come from the top. It seems like society is going to have to say, well, let's lock arms and walk towards this issue and reclaim this, and make doctors or psychiatrists or whomever not only aware but also responsible, and let them be held accountable. Because what I wanted to ask you before we start winding down is if in America you have the black box, what is it called? The black box label warning. Okay, so we ours aren't called that, but we do have that. And I also did some research about informed consent in our country, and it is by law a thing here, which I didn't know. And my question, I guess, would be, why aren't there any legal ramifications when something like this happens to a person like you, and potentially thousands, or if you say 1 in 6, hundreds of thousands of people? Where are the class action lawsuits? Where are the accountability? Or is it again politics at play?
Yeah, I love this question because so in the US, I think it was 2000. Wait, I have to look back at what year. It was made. They put a law in place that actually prevents class action lawsuits against big pharma. We are not able to open up a class act lawsuit in America. So that's number one. This is why we don't see them, because we're not able to open it up against the pharmaceutical. They have the law or the rule, whatever it was put in place, that they are not responsible. Essentially, is what this stupid law states. And so, where there's lawsuits happening is on an individual basis, where you sue the doctor, you sue the medical practice, and it is very difficult to get a lawyer. All of us have contacted lawyers, and there are lawyers out there that are willing to take it on, and I've seen people win lawsuits, and it's been great to see that. But it is very difficult. It's very difficult to do that. And so, if someone personally, I would have tried harder if I wasn't going to speak out publicly. I had decided that me speaking out publicly outweighed the possible 7 figures or 6 figures that I could have won from it personally on my end. For someone else, that's probably different. And so I would absolutely try to open up a lawsuit. And we have the right to open up a lawsuit for medical malpractice, but for not providing informed consent, for continuous misdiagnosis and polydrugging based off of an injury induced by a drug, especially in the case of benzodiazepines, because it is listed on the drug insert as protracted withdrawal syndrome. Antidepressants is harder because protracted withdrawal syndrome is not listed on the drug insert in America. PSSD is not listed yet on the drug insert. It is a matter of time that these injuries will be listed, because the FDA and Big Pharma will have their hands tied. But it's like, not only that, but then when we go to apply for disability or Social Security, it's like not an even, like, especially with Social Security, for example, it's not even a disability that is considered like within their system. And so most of us can't even get help. So now you have an illness that takes away the mind, body, and spirit. You're left dead inside of the vessel, somehow just trying to keep a breath. And we're not capable of retrieving funds to help us through the journey. And so it is a devastating, like, it is beyond devastating. It is beyond, I saw this in America, there was this lawsuit of this guy that sued maybe McDonald's. I guess one of the employees dropped a hot coffee on his genitals, like on his, and he like won this insane amount of money, justifiable. I mean, I don't know what happened to that situation, but tell that to the PSSD community that, you know, they can't get it, they can't have an erection. And PSSD is different than protracted withdrawal syndrome. So I just want to clarify that. I am not an expert in PSSD by any imagination. It is also another very devastating condition, and I know it can last.
I've done a bit of research on it, and what I've gathered from many men, especially who suffer from it, is that the over time it seems like the functioning of the parts return, but there's no sensation, so there's no objective or desire to engage in that. But this specific person that I spoke to you about just now, he has 3 kids, which he had with his second wife, whilst having PSSD. So, you know, it took a certain understanding for him to understand that, okay, this is not just about me. I can do this, although there's no, and this is probably not the correct word, but there's no payoff for me at the end. But I understand if I want a family and if I want a happy wife and a satisfied wife and you know, all of these things play a role, then this is something that I need to do. And of course, on the flip side, it's very easy for a woman also to feel neglected in that situation where, let's say, the man withdraws completely, where it's not his fault, but over time, it does become an emotional burden for any woman to bear, as it should be, because you can only understand the situation for so long, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Once it becomes 10 years, it's like, okay, what are we doing here? So I sort of want to congratulate that person for the understanding, but so many men lack the understanding or the ability to verbalize what is going on, and I think that's where you get a lot of broken relationships because of PSSD. I wanted to get back. So you mentioned your brother committed suicide. Is that correct?
My brother, that's correct. My oldest brother did commit suicide.
And you did not attend the funeral?
No, and I haven't seen my brother in, oh my God, through this whole journey. So since my wedding, right around that time, right after my wedding, I saw him. I went out to see him in Georgia, and I have not seen him since 2018. And so because after the TBI and all my life changed. And so it was devastating. It was devastating.
Because of the fact that you were physically incapable of.
There was no, I couldn't even leave the house. I can't even sit in a car for that long. I can't even speak to people. Like, it was, I could do something like this even now in a short period, and then I have to go lay down, shut everything down, the lights. Like, I cannot be outside in public. That's not even, I haven't been in a store. I don't even know what that looks like anymore. And so with my brother's passing, he had gotten a divorce, and 1 year after the divorce, he had decided. And I think there's always a higher perspective to that as well, or what really, what were the multiple things that leads to something like that. But you have to also understand, here I am fighting for my life, every inch of the nail, every inch, right? And then my brother walks off, And so for me, it was almost like he took my shot, He took my shot. And so I know that sounds dark and twisted, but at the time, that's how I felt. It's like, bro, like, I'm still fucking here. I'm with a pulse, and you got a divorce. All right, let's, you could get help, we could pick you up again. And I wish there's a part of me at that time, I understand now, but a part of that time when I did find, I was like, I had the answers. I understand how we get through my journey. I now understand how people end up injured or with illnesses or the internal emotional turmoil, how we get to that moment. And because I have a lot of these answers in the blueprint, and I felt like I could have helped him. But because I was so ill and fighting for my life, I couldn't. And so, I've communicated to him through channelers and spiritualists, and I know he's okay on the other side, which is beautiful. But I will forever live with the fact that I couldn't see my brother,
And he could very well have been someone to help you, had he not decided to take that route. But that stings. That really hurts when something like that happens.
And I do want to add one thing, and I'm so sorry for interrupting. I want to add one thing, is that when I did speak with the channelers, so I did find out after the fact that he was taking sleeping pills, and he was being given sleeping pills. And sleeping pills are either benzodiazepines, hypnotic sedatives. You're on an Ativan, or you on you're on another drug. And so when I spoke to the spiritualists, the channelers, I was told, I had asked a question: Did you take your life because of the drugs? And he said, I had, through the channeler said, I had these thoughts before, but it was the drugs that led me to that, to make that final decision that day. And so people don't realize that these drugs induce suicidal ideation, and not only induce it, but if you ever even had that thought, it will amplify it tenfold. And so I believe most people that take their lives, if they're on these drugs or came off of these drugs, I highly would consider anyone to look at what they were on, and that those drugs most likely had a big influence in those people taking their life, unfortunately.
I've never thought of it that way, but now that you mention it, it's very difficult to see it in another way. I think that's a point that's going to stay with me, that I'm definitely going to research a bit further. Okay, so you have a book coming out. When is that due? When can we expect that book?
So it's expected to come out next year. I would say after July. So after July, I'm hoping, God willing, knock on wood, that this book comes out. I am creating a new website right now, so I'm having people build out my website in preparation for that. So I have that up for advocacy work and to provide resources. I just want to provide, here are resources. So I have the site being built, and then the book comes out. And yeah, hopefully it comes together and it's ready for launch next year. That's what I could say on that.
And it's still the title is still a is still a secret?
Yes, I cannot share it right now. I cannot share it right now, but I cannot wait to be able to share it.
I can't wait to get my hands on a copy. One more thing, actually, there was I don't know if you know Professor Joanna Moncrieff.
Of course, yes.
She published a book this year called Chemically Imbalanced.
That's right.
I had the unfortunate or fortunate run-in with someone where they said that, I think I sent you a message about this, where they said that depression is a chemical imbalance in the brain, and I replied and I said, no, it's not. And the person is a board certified psychiatrist, and she was like, "This is a known fact.
No, it's not.
This is not up for debate." And I just replied and I said, I don't want to debate you. I watched the interview with her. Go get the book. It's 2025, right? Whatever came before 2025 is old news. So go get the book and then come back to me, and then we can have a discussion around that. Anyway, at the end of the show, we sort of have a rapid fire question thing.
Oh, geez.
It's not to test your knowledge. It's to educate other people. You know all the answers to this.
Okay.
You've also given some of them, but it's acronyms and medications that I get a lot of questions about and a lot of complaints about. So what I want from you is what it is. I'm not going to ask you if it's good or bad, but if is it terrible or extremely volatile, and what your take is on it. Are you ready?
All right. Let's see. Let's go.
All right. Well, the first one is PSSD, which we know now, or not now, but we know is post serotonin sexual dysfunction. So we know what that is. PAWS, PAWS, is it protracted acute withdrawal syndrome?
PAWS is post-acute withdrawal syndrome, which is essentially the same thing as protracted withdrawal syndrome or bind. It depends on if you're like protracted is kind of the umbrella, and like for benzos, we now have this term bind, which was a term coined by Benzo Information Coalition, which is like a board of medical doctors, a nonprofit that has like a board of medical doctors advocating for psych drug harm in relation to benzos, and they termed this coin I think in 2020. But it is now being picked up by the medical system. Like we do see there are a survey done in PubMed, which is being documented as research, and so the word is growing on that.
Okay. Gabapentin.
Gabapentin is for like often used for nerve damage. This is it is a very dangerous drug. People, you're prescribed it for like, it's an anticonvulsant. It could be used for nerve damage. I think unless you're falling within that group, this is a drug that is highly dangerous. It comes with its own protracted withdrawal syndrome, and it is very difficult to come off. And so you're asking someone that is anti, drugs break the brain barrier. So I don't know what answers you expected from the other.
No. These are the answers that I expect, because these are the medications that the people I work with are on, and I get the questions. So it's a nice way for someone with all of the knowledge and the ability to keep it brief, to explain that to not only my audience, but to thousands, hopefully, potential of thousands of people, to understand, okay, I know what this drug is. It's dangerous. I know why it's dangerous. It's in the same sort of vicinity as Lyrica. Am I correct? Which is a...
Yeah, it's a nerve pain medication. It probably could be used. I don't know if it's like, Oh, can also treat for seizures. Yeah, you're right. They're comparable. And this is the thing. It's like the big pharma will go get it approved for these severe conditions, but then doctors prescribe it. Oh, you have insomnia. Oh, you have some pain, discomfort. Here's a gabapentin. It's like Seroquel. Like, what are you prescribing an antipsychotic for insomnia? Like, it's insanity. It's insanity where our medical system has taken it. They're abusing prescribing. They are abusing.
So the next one is quetiapine. Well,
I think there are many other options for, like, if someone's going through anxiety, depression, PTSD. There's so many different natural treatments today. Just going carnivore, just doing a ketogenic diet or going carnivore will lower the oxidative stress in your brain and will lower your depression. Harvard did a great study on this. I think it was like 2,000 people. It was like 100% of people healed depression, anxiety. Like, it healed their autoimmune diseases. It's healing diabetes. I know there's two different types of diabetes, but the one that's not permanent, they're healing it. And so for me, you ask me about these drugs and my answer will always be the same, right? And so answer.
The reason I added quetiapine or Dopquil is because that is exactly what I was prescribed for. I mean, it's an antipsychotic, and it was given to me for insomnia, and it was at 350 milligrams, and to this day, I'm down to 37.5, and I've been there for a year. It's just I can't seem to get off of it.
What I want to mention about antipsychotics is that there is a high risk of developing tardive dyskinesia, which is a movement disorder. It's one of the most devastating conditions out there, and it, like, 20 to 40% of people will develop it in some form. And then the elderly that have, probably because of how they're metabolizing, have a 60% chance of developing a movement disorder. And this is not like some movement disorder. This is your hands are flying in the air, your eyes, you're moving. Like, again, there is a spectrum, there is a large spectrum. So, like, even just like muscle twitching in the face could happen, and that's tardive dyskinesia. And so these doctors are prescribing them for things that they were never intended to be prescribed for. And even with schizophrenia, because that's right, that's what the antipsychotic is for, we have a medical system that tells these patients that there's no other solution. You will not heal from it. And that is also not true. There are documentaries after documentaries of people healing from schizophrenia. And we also know it is ketogenic or carnivore diet is literally healing people with schizophrenia. And so we need to start, if I was to leave any message, it's take back your reverence. Do your research, look for natural remedy. There's so many natural ways of healing today. There's so many. We need to take ownership of our health, because going to a doctor, the only thing they will do is prescribe, and these are not drugs that they understand by a long shot. So anyway, back to your questions.
Are you familiar with Lauren Kennedy West?
She's a mental health
diagnosed with psychoactive. What do you call it?
Oh yes, I just saw a picture. Yes, she went keto.
She went keto, and she's fine. It's incredible. All right, sedative hypnotic medication. So that's basically sleeping medication. And then the real problem with that is that sometimes you do stuff in your sleep, and it can be pretty insignificant, but it could also mean getting into your car and going for a drive without knowing it. Which, when I read it, I mean, I've been on a sedative or sedative hypnotic for, also pretty much 20 years, until I finally kicked that. Interesting enough, and I think I'll end there, is I've been experiencing this strange nausea for about almost a year now, and no anti-nausea medications working, except for one. Not even the one that they give for chemotherapy patients. They don't work. And there's one that's very, very cheap, and it works brilliantly. And for about 2 weeks, I couldn't, even though I was tired, I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't fall asleep because it felt, what was the word? Someone used the word so brilliantly. It was as if I wanted to tear my skin off and put it on the side so that I can just lay here. I couldn't be still. Didn't make any sense at the time, and I was like, okay, I don't understand what's going on. And then about 3 weeks ago, I got my new script, and I checked the leaflet. I am going for an endoscopy to see what it is, but I took the leaflet for the first time ever, and I was like, let's just see what the symptoms or the what do you call them, side effects are. And the number one side effect was tardive dyskinesia, and I'm like, no, really? And the moment I stopped taking it after 2 or 3 in the afternoon, perfect sleep. And it blew my mind. It was just crazy.
Do you think what you're, just a quick question, do you think what you're experiencing was akathisia?
I think so. Yeah. It was, I couldn't be still.
Yeah.
Even though I was tired. People were telling me, oh, you have restless leg syndrome. And I'm like, no, dude, I know what that is. It's not that. It's the most horrific feeling that I could describe. And I think you know exactly what that is the inability to sleep even though you are tired, because your body is just refusing to let go of this inner discomfort. That's what the lady called it. She said it was a severe inner discomfort. And the moment I started taking it in the morning, because during the day I can move my leg as much as I want, and then at night everything was perfect again. All right, final one: intradose withdrawal. That's an interesting one that I haven't been able to get my head around.
Intradose withdrawal, so it's specifically related to drugs that are short acting. Like, so with benzodiazepines like Xanax and Ativan are like considered short. I think Ativan. Let's go with Xanax for now as an example. Super, super short acting drug. And so what happens is you'll take the drug, and within a few hours, you start to have rebound anxiety. You start to have rebound depression, panic attacks, PTSD episodes, and they often tend to be worse than your baseline. And so that's basically going through withdrawal until like between your doses. And so people on let's say on a Xanax, for example, or an Ativan, they may take multiple drugs. Like they may be prescribed Xanax 3 times the day. They would take it once in the morning, once at lunch, and once in the evening because it's so short acting. There are also antidepressants that are short acting, for example, as well. And so you get these. It's a devastating thing because doctors misdiagnose it. People don't understand that. Like doctors don't understand what that feels like. I experienced interdose withdrawal, and then you could also experience tolerance withdrawal, which means you need to up your dose. Both of these are signs that the drug is harming you. Like if you're experiencing tolerance withdrawal, that means that the drug is affecting your nervous system. That is not a good thing to have. And so that an initial, and I'm saying this because that can be the initial sign that maybe I should not continue going up on the drug. Maybe I should figure out how to get off the drug. That's what I wanted to say on that.
Okay. Melissa, I mean, we can talk for hours, and
I know.
hopefully we will again. But I do appreciate your time, and I do appreciate your insight, and I do appreciate everything you do for the community of people who are struggling and are unable to source the information, who are unable to convey the message of these sort of conditions to the public in a way that you do. People are unable to do the research so willingly. I mean, there's not a lot of us with this research passion in order to understand and get to the truth of something. You're doing an absolutely remarkable job, and I will help you as far as I can to get your message out, because I think it's incredibly important. And I thank you so much for your time tonight. And I hope we can continue this in the near future.
Yeah, Henry, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure speaking together, and I'm sure this won't be the last. And thank you for having me. And I think the mission of just getting out this message, I think it's both of our missions in our own way, right? Like this is part of both of our work. And I just hope, if I was to say anything left to your followers listening, is that no one is coming to heal us. There will always be guides and mentors like yourself or me and spiritualists or therapists, but we have to take back reverence of our healing and do the research and look at alternatives and really start to understand it. Once you're educated, you're able to weigh the risk and benefit ratio, and you get to make that decision. Don't allow a doctor to do that evaluation and analysis for you. You have the right to make that decision. You need to own your reverence and take back that for yourself. And so that is, if I can leave your followers with that, I would like to just leave it there.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. I wish you all the best for the rest of the day and the weekend.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And then I'll be looking out for your book next July.
Yes, I will let you know. I will let you know when it comes out. I'm sure you'll see it on my page, but I will keep you posted on that for sure, Henry.
Great stuff. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.